meditation is meant to be an evolving practice, and it has to evolve with your understanding of why you're doing these different breathing exercises, body movements, why you're doing these different energetic circulations in the body. And if you're just following an audio or you're listening to some music and trying to go into a trance, that could be good for you and it could be relaxing, but it's not really understanding the art of meditation. It's so much deeper than that. Anytime you're listening to an audio or you're watching a video, you're looking outside yourself. And they call it
Right.
the internal arts or the meditative arts because you're supposed to look internally and listen internally. And that's what's going to develop that higher sensitivity and a higher level of awareness, is being able to look inside. And if every time that you meditate, you're watching a screen or listening to music, you're not
Yeah.
looking inside near as deep as what you could if you were developing a real practice.
In our world today, it doesn't take much to get stressed out. Just turn on the news, open your calendar, or have a conversation about facing your shit and healing yourself with your non-holistic doctor. Our entire country has been under a tsunami of stress since the pandemic year of 2020, where businesses were shut down and failed, suicides and divorces drastically increased, thousands of people lost their jobs, and many people died. All due to false health mandates and guidelines with, in quotations, no science behind them. Not my words, but the words of a criminally guilty famous doctor whose last name ends in Chi. People like me and you who knew the truth and saw through the lies were censored, canceled, belittled, deemed a threat by our friends and family, and kicked out of shops and restaurants. So where do we go from here, now that the truth is out? With stress being at the root cause of most diseases, it would be wise to treat it at the source, starting with meditation. And when you start to see these things more clearly inside yourself, you also start to see them more clearly in other people. Become a yielding warrior with us today on this episode as we discuss all of these topics and more. Before we dive in, thank you for having the bravery to face your shit and heal yourself by listening to this show. Because we are talking about truth, freedom, and very real shit on this show, as I've just described, its exposure and its reach are being limited and can't reach the full potential of people that need help and want to hear this. So thank you for liking this video on Apple, sharing it on Spotify, and subscribing on YouTube, also hitting the like button, to my channel to help me break the algorithm and help others heal themselves. Facing your shit and healing yourself is a movement. You can join this movement with a one-off donation or become a member for as low as $5 a month and receive exclusive art, be featured on the show, submit questions for guests, and more. So who am I and why did I decide to create this show? Well, after unraveling all of the medical and pharmaceutical lies, some of which we just discussed earlier, that I had been told about my endometriosis, I educated myself and I was able to heal myself after 17 years of debilitating pain. My experience inspired me to actually live my art, so I created an ongoing art series about it called Every Phase, and it'll continue for the next 13 years. I powerfully illustrate how I healed myself as I live by the phases of the female hormonal cycle. The artwork shows what's happening in the brain and the body during each phase and reveals how to biohack and leverage this energy in your life. I am actually living the art as I create it, so it's about way more than just healing. The writing and art discuss truth, freedom, our current financial and healthcare system slavery, and the way out of it. Learn more by subscribing on my website, meredithochoa.com, and you can also check out my limited edition bite-sized acrylic block art pieces, only $50, capturing all of the images from the Every Phase series, and pick up a signed copy of my award-winning augmented reality interactive book, Face Your Shit, Heal Yourself. So, all of that to say, even though I was lied to for years by doctors promoting big pharma, I was able to find experts that helped me achieve what I thought was impossible. This show introduces those people and those practices to you. Today, we are chatting with former Marine, author, martial arts, and meditative arts expert Jeff Patterson. Based in Portland, Oregon, Jeff has over 36 years of experience practicing and teaching the meditative and martial arts. 3 decades ago, he founded Northwest Fighting Arts, also called Portland Tai Chi Academy, a martial arts haven, imparting wisdom to a thriving community of over 25,000 students. Some of his top accomplishments include earning the title of Sifu in Tai Chi and Qigong, 4th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and becoming a guru-level instructor in Eskrima and running one of the biggest martial arts academies in the Northwest. Also creating 2 amazing kids who help keep him positive. With more than 30 years of hands-on experience, Jeff's crowning achievement is his recent literary endeavor, The Yielding Warrior. This work stands as a testament to his unwavering dedication to the world of meditative arts. In this captivating book, Jeff introduces a fresh and invaluable perspective on life's everyday challenges. Anchoring his advice in the core principle of yielding, Jeff invites readers to explore the transformative power of this principle, offering a priceless resource for those seeking to enrich their lives and cultivate inner strength.
Last night, I just got back from Kauai, so I'm getting back into the swing of things here at the academy.
Wow, Kauai. How was that?
It was nice. I have a place there, and I go back a couple times a year to do maintenance, so I was painting and just a lot of cleanup stuff.
Dude, you have a place there. I'm like, why ever leave? Like, where's
Yeah.
they're at?
Well,
Sounds amazing.
if I didn't have this academy here and my family here, I'd definitely consider it.
Yeah. Do you like living in Portland?
It's a good city. It's been in a little bit of turmoil since last few years, but it's hopefully going to get
Yeah.
back on track. And
Yeah, looks absolutely gorgeous in the pictures that I've seen. I have a really good friend that lives up there. Not Portland, but like a little small town, Eugene. I don't know if
oh yeah,
Oregon,
yeah,
Eugene.
I've
Yeah,
been to
that's
Eugene
where
many
he
times.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. His name's Gino. He's fucking awesome. Hey, Gino. Shout out. But yeah, we've tried to go up there, but it's always been like, no, the weather's horrible, or it's like freezing or raining or like some kind of crazy ass storm. So we haven't made it up there just with our schedules and everything. A lot warmer and more humid down here.
Yes, the humidity is something I could do without.
While we're on the topic of swampy ass humidity, I'd love for you to share with everyone how meditation has helped you face your own shit, leading you to become who you are today.
I was brought to meditation in a bit of a roundabout way. As a younger guy, I was really into Western boxing and didn't really have any desire to do any of the meditative practices at all. I just wanted to be a better competitor and train. And I used to go to this boxing gym not too far from my academy here called Grand Avenue Boxing Gym. And there was a coach there who was a very well-known coach, created a lot of high-level fighters. And he was always busy. I always wanted to train with him, but he really didn't have time for me. And so I just started following him around and showing up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there and trying to get him to recognize me. And after about 3 or 4 months of following him around, he started showing me a few things and paying a little bit of attention to me. And then something happened after 2 or 3 weeks of training with him that changed my life forever. And I remember him telling me, he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. And at the time, I'm thinking, isn't that for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better boxer? And I had a lot of respect for him though. And I took on the practice and it changed my life in many ways. And I don't believe that I would have my academy here or have created a lot of the things that I've done in my life if it wasn't for the meditative arts.
I totally get the reference to old people too in the park. Isn't that it's kind of I'll say the marketing around meditation has definitely changed, I think, from old people in the park to now people are beginning to see being mindful and aware of what's actually going on around me and in my life could be of use to me.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
people, even in high level athletics, you'll look at like Phil Jackson, who coached the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers when Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were playing. And he used to have his athletes doing meditation and Tai Chi and yoga because of the value to make them a higher level competitor. And so it's really hitting the mainstream for sure. I think in the last 30 years, there's been a huge adjustment in to the awareness of the value of a meditative practice.
And it definitely begs the question and inspires the question in most people, which I know that you've heard. I can't meditate, or meditation doesn't work for me, or I don't know what it means, and I just can't seem to wrap my head around it. All these ideas and stories and riddles I'm sure you've heard. Can you share about your methods of building that personalized meditation practice?
Yeah, it's a pretty deep question, and we could take that in a lot of directions. But it's funny that
Mhm.
you say that because that is probably the most common thing I've heard through all of my 30 years of teaching the meditative arts is that people think they can't do it because they can't quiet the mind. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions of the art is meditation is not meant to be having a quiet mind and just be in bliss. It's kind of like lifting weights. If you just do one repetition, you're not going to get very strong. But meditation, if you sit down, say for 20 minutes and do a sitting meditation, or you're doing a movement meditation, everybody out there, it doesn't matter who you are, or how long you've been meditating, you're going to get distracted. And the idea isn't to avoid all of the distractions. It's building that muscle and that intuition and that feeling to bring those distractions back to center. And if you do 150 reps of this a day and you get distracted and you come back to center, eventually 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the line, it's pretty easy to bring yourself back to center in any confrontation, in any stressful environment. And it helps you in multiple areas anywhere in your life.
Absolutely. I can definitely relate to that in my own experience with meditation. One of the first modalities, one of the first practices that was really the springboard for everything else in my own healing journey was totally meditation. For me, it just started with asking myself, like, how I'm doing. I don't know if you've heard of that, but I definitely was before that someone that has asked that question that was saying, this doesn't work, or like, I'm not sure, because I think a lot of people project this idea that you're supposed to be sitting, like you just said, without distractions, and you reach this kind of state of just like inner peace and just complete bliss, and you just are one with everything. And so when you don't have that immediately, you're like, I'm doing this wrong. Um,
Mhm.
but it's really for me just been like getting to know myself. Meditation is required in order to be able to sit and listen to what you really need. What are your thoughts on that?
With the meditative practice, I feel like your personal awareness is heightened dramatically. And
Mhm.
it's part of that is getting to know yourself. I feel like a lot of times in today's society, we get caught up in wearing these masks that shield us from people. We don't want them to see really how we're feeling or who we are. And we're always putting these blockades up to protect us. Well, we do that so much that a lot of times we're doing that with our own self awareness. And so we're not even being totally, truly honest with ourselves. And having a meditative practice helps give you time to really look at yourself and really see the things that are going on inside you, which helps in everything you do, whether it's, your own personal things or your relationships with other people. If you can let go of that mask a little bit, it's life changing.
It is the first step facing your shit, meditate. And that's part of why I ask. That's part of why I ask what has helped you face your own shit and who you became today, because it does start with that. It does start with being authentic and really facing the music, so to speak, facing the truth of who we are. In order to do that, we have to listen and we have to actually get slow enough and get mindful enough and get aware enough to see what's really happening behind the mask, behind the curtain, behind all of our behaviors. What is that motivating force there? And I also think that a lot of people, like you were saying, wear that mask and they get lost in these routines and behaviors, and we just live life on default a lot of the time without knowing why. So with that being said, what is one thing you recommend all people start today, and then one thing that they stop today to help them improve the different areas of their life with these ritual and active philosophical methods?
Well, other than the practice itself, I think one thing to start doing would be to incorporate a little bit more gratitude and awareness to being grateful for what
Mm.
you have. I feel like a lot of times we get caught up in the to-dos or the problems and forget that we're lucky to have a place to rest our head. That simple act of just being more grateful is really powerful. As far as letting go of something, letting go of your mask on trying to
Mm.
really see things more clearly. You mentioned ritual, active, and philosophical practices. That's the core to any meditative practice. And developing a ritual practice is one of the most important things you do, whether you're doing sitting meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, it doesn't matter what it is having that consistent daily practice that you're doing a little bit every day is where you're really going to get the value of any meditative practice. Meditation's meant to be more of a way of life and less of a hobby that we do once in a while. And then we have our active
Mhm.
practices, and those are easy to use as well. You can do them in as little as 2 to 3 minutes, incorporate them 5, 10 times a day, even if it's as simple as just counting out 10 breaths or doing some spinal rotations or doing some energetic circulations in the body, whatever it is. And then also, lastly, incorporating the philosophical practices, which can be either ritual based or active based. And I think if you do a combination of those three things and building a personalized practice for yourself, you can do anything with the practice. In the meditative arts, there's 5 different directions of the practice. There's the athletic or the martial side, the therapeutic side, the medical side, the philosophical side, and then also the meditative or spiritual side. And as you build a life practice, you might resonate with 1 or 2 of those different than the person next to you, and that's okay. All of the core fundamentals are very much the same, but you really can fit anybody's lifestyle and enhance it with the meditative practice.
And I hear all of this too, speaking of rituals, there's debate over it takes 20 minutes or it takes 30 minutes or it's 15 and then you're meditating, or you need to do it first thing before you do anything, or you need to do it before you go to bed because it's going to set your brain for the next day. What are your thoughts on that kind of jargon?
I think meditation is meant to be more of a way of life, and you should do it all the time. There
Right.
is no specific timeline. However, you could get some benefits from doing some breath work for 2 minutes, but you can often get a lot deeper into a meditation if you're doing it for 45 minutes. And there's no right or wrong there. However, you wanna have a strategic plan to understand what these different meditations are about. And one of the things that I've heard people so many times say, I follow this meditation or I watch this one and I listen to this music and I meditate. Well, it's great that they're doing something. Meditation is meant to be an evolving practice, and it has to evolve with your understanding of why you're doing these different breathing exercises, body movements, why you're doing these different energetic circulations in the body. And if you're just following an audio or you're listening to some music and trying to go into a trance, that could be good for you and it could be relaxing, but it's not really understanding the art of meditation. It's so much deeper than that.
That literally opens up probably a whole other episode on guided meditations, which is definitely something I've employed when working on very specific aspects of life or specific issues I want to look at, things that I want to really just become clear. Guided meditations in like what you're saying, where there'll be a guide through it, or you're actually going to go to a certain place and kind of look and lay out a certain problem. And you are in this trance or you are in more of your light body. Like you said, I don't personally think that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But as far as guided meditation versus, or with music or in a trance versus some of these more like grounded practices, what would you say would be more beneficial, or what would you say would lead someone to just more peace inside?
Definitely developing a true meditative practice on your own. Anytime you're listening to an audio or you're watching a video, you're looking outside yourself. And they call it
Right.
the internal arts or the meditative arts because you're supposed to look internally and listen internally. And that's what's going to develop that higher sensitivity and a higher level of awareness is being able to look inside. And if every time that you meditate, you're watching a screen or listening to music, you're not
Yeah.
looking inside near as deep as what you could if you were developing a real practice.
Yeah, totally. At this point now in my practice, it's it's the music and the party when I go inside. Not on the outside, it's on the inside where they're all partying, I'll go to different points in my body. Specifically when I was healing and still healing from endometriosis, I have a kind of womb garden, right? So I have a lot of different things happening in the sacral chakra, and I'll go more into my body, and it literally is like a party down there sometimes into meditation. And I go, and my attention or my focus will take me there, and I'm just in that energy in the like creative waters of womb, if you will.
Yeah, it's great that you're spending that time. The only thing I would say is just try to do it. Make sure you're doing it a little bit every day and try to incorporate some of those other things. And then it's always, even though I've been doing this and teaching for over 30 years, I'm still learning all the time. Meditation is not something
Yeah.
you can learn in a 6-month course. It's a lifetime practice and it is very deep. All of Chinese medicine is based on Qigong theory. And so that alone right there, if you just followed that one path, could be a lifetime study, not even talking about the philosophical, the therapeutic, or the martial or athletic side or the spiritual side. And so it's an extremely deep practice, and so I would just recommend to anybody out there to keep diving a little bit deeper and learning how to evolve your practice because that's where you're gonna see all the real benefits of it.
And speaking of the depth, the title of your latest book definitely caught my eye, The Yielding Warrior. Can you share about this fascinating philosophy of yielding?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different philosophies in the meditative and martial arts, and yielding to me is by far one of the most intriguing, and that's what sparked the interest for the book, and within yielding, there's 3 different directions. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea I push you, you push me. Whoever's a bigger, stronger person with the most leverage is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force, and now I can respond with less effort. So I don't have to try to butt heads with you and see if I'm tougher than you. And it's obvious how this is effective in athletics or combat sports because you're not always going up against people that you can overpower. And so learning how to yield and redirect your energy can help you defeat bigger, stronger people. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You have to be very well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. It's literally years and years to get to a high level of that. But even from day one, you start seeing these things more clearly. And this is where it becomes very interesting because when you start to see these things more clearly inside yourself, you also start to see them more clearly in other people, which is now we're moving into mental yielding. So, say, for example, I say something that unsettles you and I pick up on it when it's like this, it's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place than if I'm not paying attention and pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And so learning how to use
Mhm.
yielding in all of our interactions is very powerful. One, you're just being considerate, but two, it helps you lead conversations, lead negotiations, lead things into a positive direction with the least amount of conflict. Then we have emotional yielding, and it's the same idea, but with your own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about oftentimes something will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding, if we could have taken a step back and noticed it before it gained any momentum and realized, maybe this is a better approach, a lot of times it can save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And when I'm explaining this to people, I've been teaching this for over 30 years. I'll often hear people say, "Oh, I totally resonate with that. That makes sense. I do that all the time." And I agree. Everybody does this to some degree all the time. But it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, he would see things about that scene and the timeline and everything that happened, a series of events that you and I had no clue over. The meditative arts helps you see things that 95% of the population never sees, and I feel like while we can get a glimpse of it, if you don't really develop a practice, you miss out on so much of the fruit that life has to offer.
So well said. And what I got to from what you were saying and listening to this concept and this philosophy of yielding, it's rooted really in knowing yourself as a spiritual being, as and at least in my opinion, goes back to understanding all is one, understanding that, and this is something I know has guided me a lot too. Understanding that when you know the teachings of unity and you know yourself in that more quantum spiritual space, there is literally nothing that can defeat you because you understand that nothing is bigger than you because you are everything. So therefore, you can't be defeated. But it's that yielding and that like kind of dance in our interactions and in our day to day because we're separate in separate bodies to remember that we're all one. So we're living in that contrast and that push and pull. And it reminds me so much like when you're talking of that concept of yielding becomes like this dance a little bit to me.
Very much is like a dance for sure. There's the waning of yin and yang. Look at the
Mhm.
symbol in yin and yang, and it's the extreme fades into the unextreme. And it's very fluid. And a lot of people don't know this, but the yin and yang symbol is not just two dimensional. It's also like a spiral and it goes up and down as well. And so it's very deep and can be applied from any different direction. And the more I realize and the more I learn and more I study the meditative arts, I realize that I'm going to be a student for the rest of my life. There's so much to grow from. And it's, I've invested thousands and thousands of hours into this. And it's also been my profession for 30 years. it's not something you can figure out by listening to one audio program or doing a 6-month course. You really need to adapt these principles and just make them part of your day. And that's the easiest thing to do. And it's the great thing about the practice in that you don't have to be a monk and retire to a cave and meditate the rest of your life. You can do simple ritual practice and active practices and integrate some of these philosophical practices into your day and just enrich your life doing the same things that you're already doing, but just making a few adjustments.
And it's the nature of polarity, really, in what you were talking about in yin and yang. To know one or to experience one, you have to live it. And then to know the other, you must know the complete opposite. You can't have one without the other. That's the whole nature of this contrast and this like polarizing experience, which experiences, speaking of billboards, if you could have one with anything on it, getting a message out doesn't have to be yielding, but getting a message out to millions or billions. What would yours say?
I think it would be considerate and grateful.
Damn, that's a powerful one. Gratitude just puts the power in your hands again.
One of my old teachers told me that one of the best love potions is consideration, and the more that you can apply consideration in your life for others around you and those you care about, it just magnifies the good that happens to you.
Oh, yeah. Consideration. It's like when we don't consider other people, we really, or other people don't consider us, we really get it. We
Right.
really get the importance of consideration.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's like when you haven't been considered or been discarded, then you're like, oh, consideration. Yeah, that'd be a good thing to get on. It's now time. This is my favorite part of the show. It is our finale, biohacking with art. Question: are you ready?
I believe so.
You're a pro. You've meditated. Listen, you're born ready. If you could create the yielding warrior as an art piece, how would you make it? And what would you choose?
In some way, whether it be a painting or a sculpture, it would be a river. And the reason why I pick a river is because it flows with nature, it's flexible, and anything you put in its way, it finds a way to deal with it.
Wow, very thoughtful. I love rivers too. Rivers and lakes, really all bodies of
Yeah.
water, but specifically rivers I've really loved. And when I moved and I came here to this new spot where I'm living, I said, I'm not moving unless there's a lake in my backyard or at least a river because I loved these river houses. And I got both. Got a
Nice.
river at the front and I got a lake in my backyard. And you're
Wow.
exactly right. Yeah, that river, yeah, anything you put in its path, it finds a way to deal with it. And it's funny you say that too, because it's actually been one of my very beginning statements or mantras in understanding meditation. It felt like the way I related to it was like being a stone in the river. In actually the way that I related to dealing with just like overwhelming emotion or conflict. It's so funny that you, like, painted this picture of that because that's very much how I've related to meditation in the past is, like, myself there and then the river just, like, washing over you.
Nice. I like that.
It has been, Jeff, tremendous chatting with you today. Tell us where people can find you and learn more about your incredible work.
Right now, we are running a free book offer for the Yielding Warrior. You can go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book and receive a free copy of that. You just pay shipping and handling. There's also options on there for checking out our online program, and you can try that out for a couple weeks and see if that might be a good fit for you. And hopefully, if you do, it'll be very educational for you.
And of course, we will totally list all of these in the show notes, all these resources we chatted about. And I hope everyone is able to take away something from this meditative conversation today to help them go out, face their shit, therefore healing themselves. And remember, as always, the truth will set you free. We will see you all next time. Bye. If you liked this episode or you think this show would be useful for someone else, the best way you can show your support is to share it on your social media outlets with family and friends, or subscribe with the link below to receive exclusive perks. And if you're feeling really generous, please leave a review on podchaser.com, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts, and pick up a signed copy of my book about how I healed myself from endometriosis on my Instagram at Meredith W. Ochoa. Thank you so much for listening and for having the bravery to face your shit and heal yourself.